Think about the last time someone asked you who your friends are. Not your contacts, not your followers, not the people you see at work, at church, in class, in the neighborhood. The people you would actually call at 11 p.m. if something went wrong. The people who know the real version of you, not the version you perform for everyone else. How many names came to mind? For most people reading this, it's 2, maybe 3. And somewhere along the line, you started wondering if that number said something bad about you. If normal people had more. If there was something you were doing wrong socially that kept the list that short. This video is going to tell you something you probably haven't heard before. That number might be one of the most accurate reflections of who you actually are.
Before we go any further, we need to establish something that most people never properly define. A friend is not your co-worker, not your classmate, not your neighbor, your roommate, your gym partner, or the person you see every Sunday at church. Those are people you share proximity with. Proximity is not friendship. A friend is someone who knows you without the performance, someone whose presence requires nothing from you except being yourself, someone who has seen you at your worst and chose to stay, not out of obligation or convenience, but out of genuine care. By that definition, most people have far fewer friends than they think they do. And the person with 2 or 3 people who meet that standard is not socially poor. They are socially precise. Today we're going to talk about why. The psychology behind people who are naturally selective with their inner circle, not because life made them that way, but because something in how they're wired makes depth feel more valuable than volume, and why that is not something to fix. Most people confuse social activity with social connection.
They have full calendars, group chats with 50 people, colleagues they lunch with every day, and a social media feed full of familiar faces. And yet, if you ask them who they could be completely honest with, who they could show the messy, unedited version of themselves to without fear of judgment, the list gets very short, very fast. This is not a modern problem. Research on human social networks consistently shows that despite the hundreds of connections people maintain, the average person has only 2 to 3 people they consider genuinely close. Not acquaintances, not friendly contacts, people they would describe as truly knowing them. Which means the person with 2 or 3 close friends is not behind. They are exactly where most people actually are. They just haven't spent energy pretending otherwise. The difference is that some people have learned to fill the space between genuine connection with social noise. Lots of plans, lots of names, lots of activity, and underneath it all, a quiet sense that nobody really knows them. The person with 2 or 3 real friends has made a different choice. They just may not have realized it was a choice. Here is where it gets interesting. People who naturally maintain small, tight inner circles share a specific set of psychological traits that most people don't recognize as connected. They tend to think deeply, not just about ideas, but about people. They notice things others miss. The inconsistency between what someone says and how they behave. The subtle shifts in energy. The gap between someone's public self and their private one. That level of observation makes it harder to connect superficially, because they're always seeing more than the surface. They value authenticity over approval. The social game, saying the right things, being liked by the right people, maintaining the right image, holds little appeal for them. Not because they're antisocial, because the energy required to maintain a performance feels like a waste of something they'd rather spend on something real. They are comfortable being alone. Not lonely, alone. There's a distinction that most people collapse into one feeling. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted solitude. Aloneness is the peace of chosen solitude. People with few friends often have a rich inner life. They read, they think, they create, and they don't need external stimulation to feel okay about themselves. And perhaps most importantly, they have high standards for trust. Not because they've been burned necessarily, but because they understand instinctively that real friendship requires a level of vulnerability that cannot be extended to everyone. They give access slowly and deliberately, and when they do give it, they give it completely. That is not a flaw, that is discernment.
Here is what society gets wrong about this.
We live in a culture that treats popularity as a proxy for worth. The person with the most friends, the biggest network, the most active social life, is held up as the standard of a healthy, successful, well-adjusted human being. And the person who prefers depth over breadth, who goes home early, who doesn't feel the need to fill every weekend with social obligation, who has a small circle and is completely at peace with it, gets quietly pathologized. Something must have happened to them. They must be shy, introverted to the point of dysfunction, afraid of people, unable to connect. But here is what that narrative misses entirely. Quality of connection is not determined by quantity of connections. A person with 2 friends who know them completely is more socially fulfilled than a person with 50 friends who know their highlight reel. The research on happiness and social connection is consistent on this. It is the depth of relationships that predicts well-being, not the number. The loneliest people are often the ones surrounded by the most people, because they've traded genuine connection for social performance, and somewhere underneath all the noise, they know the difference. The person with 2 or 3 real friends is not missing something. In many cases, they've already found something most people spend their whole lives looking for. Here's the difference between selective and closed off. This is the nuance that makes this video honest, rather than just validating. There is a difference between being selective and being closed off. And it's worth being able to tell them apart, in yourself and in others. Selectivity is conscious and at peace. The selective person doesn't feel the absence of a large circle. They're not avoiding people out of fear. They engage with the world openly. They just don't hand out access to their inner life carelessly. They can be warm, present, and genuinely interested in people without needing those people to become close friends. Being closed off is different. It shows up as a quiet resistance to letting anyone in regardless of who they are or how much they've earned trust. It feels like safety but functions like a wall. The closed-off person might tell themselves they're just being selective, but deep down they know the difference, because selectivity feels like peace. Guardedness feels like tension. The question to ask yourself honestly is not how many friends do I have, it's how open am I to the right person when they show up. If the answer is genuinely yes, your small circle is a feature, not a bug. If the answer is that you're not sure you'd let anyone in regardless, that's worth sitting with. The people who understand the value of a small inner circle will tell you the same things. The conversations are different. When you strip away the social performance and the small talk and the image management, what's left is something that most people rarely experience. Real honesty. The kind of conversation where you say the actual thing and get the actual response, and leave feeling more like yourself than when you arrived. The loyalty is different. A friend who chose you specifically, not because you work together or live nearby or move in the same circles, but because they actually see you and want to be in your life. That friendship holds in a way that social convenience never does. And the energy is different. Maintaining a large social network requires constant output, remembering details, managing dynamics, performing consistency across dozens of relationships simultaneously. A small circle requires depth rather than breadth. And for the kind of person this video is about, depth is where they live best. That is not a limitation, that is a design. Here is the truth that ties all of this together. The number of friends you have has never been an accurate measure of your worth, your health, or your capacity to connect. It has only ever been a measure of how many people you've decided to give real access to. And if that number is 2 or 3, if those 2 or 3 people know the version of you that most of the world never sees, then you are not someone who struggles to connect. You are someone who refuses to connect carelessly. There is a difference. And it matters. The world will keep rewarding the performance of popularity. It will keep making you feel like more is better, and that a quiet Friday night with one person who actually knows you is somehow less than a crowded room full of people who don't believe it. The quality of your inner circle is not measured by how many people are in it. It's measured by how fully the people in it actually know you. 2 or 3 people who know you completely is worth more than 100 people who only know your name. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment. How many people are actually in your real inner circle? You can't unsee what you now know. This is the Unloved Mind, and I'll see you in the next one.